Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists. Hey everybody, welcome back to the pod. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm here with Will Armstrong. How's it going, man?
Yeah, who? Who now?
Will Armstrong, that guy.
Welcome back, Douglas. Nice to see you.
You too. What have you been up to today?
You know what? I went on a little bit of a studio hunt in downtown Santa Fe.
Cool.
I actually had not heard back from this one that I looked at a couple of weeks ago, and was having lunch with my lovely wife and texted this lady out of the blue, just like, hey, do you have anything? I know she owns this whole 2nd Street area of studios. And so I texted her. She was like, oh my God, I'm right around the corner from where you're having lunch. I do have a place that just opened up. Went by, looked at that, and then finally heard back from the other people just now as we got on to the recording here. So I've been approved for the other one. So,
wow.
I don't know. I got a couple options.
You want to pull the studio out of your house and have it somewhere offsite?
I do. I've always wanted to. I've worked from a home studio for, since probably 2002. You know, it's weird. I've always been one of these guys. I kind of have always hated having the studio in the house. Mm-hmm. And I want to work out of the house. I want to go to work. I like going to work.
Well, your Minnesota place, you're able to it's not far, but it's far enough that it's like you're in a different world. It's like this is work and this is home.
Yeah, you know, I'm back in the back lot. I'm back in the barn in Minnesota, and I don't have a cell signal out there. And I'm so freaking productive when I can just get completely away. So, I think I'm going to pull the trigger on one of these.
Nice. We've never wanted to go that route. In fact, we've had our studio on our property for years, and we had an opportunity where we could be part of this other thing, and we considered it, and we're like, oh, you don't want to drive somewhere to it. You know, there's times in the middle of the night you got to go check on your ovens and your furnaces, and it just having it right out on the driveway is a nice thing for us. But I know that that makes a lot of sense what you're saying for you.
You know, I don't know many other artists, honestly, that are like me that want to go to work. It's kind of the dream to have it in your home or to at least have like a separate building. Like I know like Matthew Hatala, I've seen his kind of dream studio that they rebuilt like a phoenix after they had that big fire. Yeah. He rebuilt and it's like a place for he and his son to get out there and work. And it's close to the home. It's like you like that. Luke Proctor, who we talked to this week.
Yeah.
He's got his spot just right there at home. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know. I grew up with a father who very much defined kind of banker's hours, and that's how I like keeping my own work. Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. Well, I hope this all works out for you. That sounds like a great opportunity. Will there be like a showroom type thing where people can stop by and see work and that sort of thing?
You know, one of them has a huge showroom and a big studio in the back, but it's a little more than I want to spend. Mm-hmm. Plus, they don't include utilities. The other one is a smaller area. I can clean it up and show my work for their First Friday events that they have down there on 2nd Street, but I don't have to pay utilities. It's a set price. I'm just paying for my Wi-Fi. You got to look at all of those kind of options.
Awesome. That's exciting. I've been listening to your episode with Luke. Really great talk, by the way.
Thanks.
I really enjoyed hearing it. Yeah, but there was something you kind of glossed over. You brought up you were feeling a little FOMO, and I'm like, what does that exactly mean? I had to look that one up. And I think I'm feeling a little of it too.
Dude, it's horrible right now.
Looking
at social media, and I've turned my back on Florida. I kind of need those. I've been like spinning my wheels in the studio, and I see all my friends out there in the sunshine and down in South Florida. And I'm really missing that. I'm missing the humidity.
I tell you, we talked about this on the pod. Renee and I always started our season the first weekend of the year, and we just ran hard. We would already have 4 shows under our belt by now, and there's shows that are happening. There's friends out there doing this, even though we're not ready to be out there. We've got 2 great commissions we're working on that we're extremely excited about. We're super productive in the studio. We've got all this really good stuff going on, but yet I'm like feeling like I'm missing out on something.
Big time. Our friend Barbara Holloway, who is an incredible fiber artist, wearables, she's down there and she posted about St. Armand's Circle. It's a Howard Allen event show. And I'm like, man, I love that neighborhood. I love that area. And I just am missing it.
You know what it was for me? Is seeing the Temple Bethel ladies setting up. That's what got me this week. I love that show. And I mean, we're going to sit here and just talk about all the great things we're missing out on. But it's true. It was kind of bumming me out. And then when you said that in the episode with Luke, I'm like, wait a minute. I had to do a little bit of check-in with myself. And honestly, I've been doing a lot more looking at social media because of the podcast. You know, we're trying to kind of stay up on what people are doing out there. My circle of friends has widened, and I got to pull back a bit because this keeping my nose in my phone is the thing I tell my kids not to do. And here it's kind of bumming me out.
Yeah, it's bumming me out big time. I'm the same way with those Temple Bethel ladies. There's a great little open air smoked fish shack down the road that I've been to with Aaron Heckenberg before. Just sat there at the bar and I had a really nice piece of fresh smoked fish. And I mean, I'm missing the whole thing, the experience of being out and on the road. So hats off to you folks that are down there, wherever you are in Florida. And if Arizona is coming up and California, you've got La Quinta coming up in March, but man, I'm really struggling. You
know what I'm not missing? I am not missing that weekend where they had to close down on Sunday and everyone had to run for cover.
It looked like the whole state shut down.
The whole freaking state, all the shows cancel on that Sunday, and tornadoes were touching down. That was treacherous.
I was wondering, did they have to close down the shows if they were getting rain from the inside of the booth?
Well, then there was that one.
I saw down there in South Florida that we had a good friend, Carol Swayze. Looks like the show directors forgot to turn off the sprinkler system.
That was a bad scene. That was not good. That was not good at all.
That happened. Yeah, that happened to a show that I did in Ohio one time. And, it's just like they apologized and said, oh, yeah, we'll get that taken care of. And it was like, the sprinklers popped up at the back of the booths and soaked everybody's back stock. And everybody was going, screaming and banging on the library door where it was happening. But we got it taken care of. We got an apology. And boy, did that go a long way.
I had a situation once at the Uptown Art Fair when a bus rounded the corner, took our entire booth with it.
What?
It did.
Seriously? Your whole glass booth?
We were setting up. It was Sunday morning. It hit one of the railings there that then grabbed onto a tent leg, which then pulled the tent. And it stopped because all the artists were banging on the thing because it was dragging us and it dragged into our neighbor and into the neighbor. It could have been a bad scene, but they stopped. So it basically just turned our tent into a pretzel and just dinked up our display a little bit, but no work was broken. So
yeah, happened to Michael McKee at Cherry Creek one year. He had his awning up and somebody was whipping down the street and took the whole thing out. But you know what? Shit happens, right?
And the point I wanted to make with that was the director came over, she put her hands on her hip, she got very angry about it, she showed indignation, she wanted heads to roll, and I was like, oh, she actually cares that this happened. And you know what I mean?
Empathy.
It felt good. So
it does feel good. A little bit of empathy goes a long way. And
it sure does.
And when you don't get that, you start to spike into the fuck you red. That needle moves.
It does.
You get angry for people when things like that happen. And we got a lot of love and respect for our good friend Carol. So sorry that happened down there in Florida.
That really is that sucky.
We're talking about shows canceling or changing their rules. And luckily, we're not having that huge wave of cancellations like we had last year or God forbid the year before. Mm-hmm. We're just having a little bit of changes here and there. And one thing that I wanted to mention, Douglas, is the good folks down at Main Street Fort Worth are dealing with a new challenge. They've always kind of called that show like the central part of the show is Sundance Square. And I don't think they're going to be able to use that this year.
That's the part of the show where they have the stages and it's the through line through the entire festival up and down Main Street. So I know that it's a challenge, but I have a lot of faith in Jay Downey and their team that they are going to make it work, although it does make us all a little nervous. Change is scary.
I don't want to change the place that I park my vehicle show to show. So it is a little bit interesting, but what I loved about it is that Jay and his team kind of faced that, let us know what was going on, and be like, look, it's taken a little bit longer. We're going to get our booth selection out. And so that kind of thing goes a long way. It's like, okay, I got confidence. It's being handled. They're going to deal with it.
And they're meeting all of the things that people want. People want to have a section of the show without being under the big top tents. So they're still going to have an area for people who want their tall tents to put up by themselves. So I think it's going to still be the Fort Worth we know it to be.
You know what, Douglas? It's going to be a little bit different. That's fine. I have total faith in the show, and I'm excited to get back down to Texas.
Me too.
You were talking earlier in the week, looking on social media about like parking.
Oh, stop it. I already know where you're going with this.
You don't. I'm not going to give you a hard time. I'm really not. I admire the fact that you're prepared, but I did want to talk about like getting the hotel at the show versus getting a hotel on the outskirts of the show where you have parking. And it's like this kind of yin and yang.
That trailer of ours is such a complexity in a city like this.
Albatross.
It for sure is. And so, I mean, is it going to be easier to park out of the city, or for sure, everybody just loves that you can take a break, run up to the hotel room, switch off, that sort of thing. So being able to have the show right there within the footprint of the show is needed. It's necessary to pull off long hours like that.
Pull off long hours, or even, I remember inclement weather, and I get a room right there at that Courtyard Blackstone, and I'm looking down on Main Street, and I'm watching the weather come through, and it's like, I love looking down at the weather whipping through the street and being like, look, I'm protected. I'm under the big top. One year they had a big disaster, though, and you could look down the way, and then you get on social and you're like, hey, if your work is under this on the so-and-so block, go check it out. I'm watching the wind rip the top of the tent off.
You're like Channel 5 News or something, broadcasting to the masses.
Definitely, man. I mean, it's we got to watch out for each other, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I saw some people online this week talking about Jazz Fest and booking their rooms at Jazz Fest. And it's like, the thing that blows me away is that you've got everything this year from Trombone Shorty to The Who are playing. So you pull into the neighborhood, and the whole neighborhood, it's like block to block. People are out on their porches. They're walking to the show already as you're going to do your setup. It becomes, while it's an international thing, it's just this neighborhood event. And it's just a lovely, lovely time. It's just so fun. It actually ends at 6 o'clock. You don't have electricity unless you've brought your own little battery pack or whatever. You don't have electricity. You're under their big top. Things over at 6 o'clock.
So you can still experience what's going on.
Yeah, man. My recommendation at that show is to actually stay. If you can afford it, just pony up and stay in New Orleans. I mean, if you want to save some money, go out and stay at the airport. But I feel like you're missing out if you're all the way out there. It's just such a good time, and it makes you feel like you've been a part of something bigger than just art shows. It just feels, I don't know, you feel super rock and roll. You feel kind of like one of the staff a little bit, and you're going to meet people. I've met... Jazz Fest, I've met, who's the guy that plays the Hulk?
Lou Ferrigno?
No, old ass.
I'm not old, you're old.
You're a day older than me, pal.
Are you talking one of the news superheroes?
Mark Ruffalo.
Oh,
No, Mark Ruffalo.
Up with that.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo. He's a big star.
I know but I was watching Marvel shows now.
What do you mean? That's like the biggest movie
overplayed
series.
I only watch independent
Hollywood.
Films. I am highbrow fine art with a capital F. Thank you very much.
All right. So listen, I've been down to Jazz Fest. I've met everybody from Mark Ruffalo in the Marvel series to Bill Murray. And it's an incredible experience. So get down in there and stay where you can. Have a fantastic time. It's a big show, and it's a big time.
I used to wait on Bill Murray, by the way.
Oh, shit. Where?
St. Paul? Didn't he own one of the teams around here?
Yeah, he still does. St. Paul Saints.
Okay, yeah, he was one of my regulars at the St. Paul Hotel and at W.A. Frost, and so, yeah.
Incredible. I was in the beer line, and I hear this voice,
It's very distinguishable.
Yeah, super recognizable, and I turn around, and I'm like, and then I turn back around real quick, because there's Bill Murray, and he's talking to this lady behind me in the beer line. And I'm like, I can't believe it. And I pick up my phone and I turn it on selfie. So I'm looking and I pull my hand out and I'm leaning in to get Bill Murray. And just as I'm getting ready to hit the thing, he leans in, puts his head right over my shoulder, and he goes, "You owe me $1." And I take the picture, and I was like, dude, I will gladly, please let me buy you a beer. I mean, obviously you can afford your own beer, but let me just say I bought, he's like, nah, I'm not even drinking a beer yet. I'm getting around for the band. And he sat there and immediately totally disarming and like sees my artist badge. And I was there as the +1 for my wife's work. I've never gotten into the show. And he's just, well, tell me about your work and tell me who you've here to say. We started talking about Margot Price, who we just seen down at the Americana tent. And I mean, just incredible. So those of you who have gotten in, it's I don't know whether it's a lottery ticket or not, but it certainly feels as rare. And I wish you nothing but success and good times.
Your story reminds me, I mean, we could probably go on and on with these celebrity sightings or whatever, but there was another time when I was working at the hotel and we were doing a private party with Tom Brokaw, who didn't they used to nickname him Tom Brokenjaw? And he walks up to me, hands in his pocket, and I look at him, and I of course knew who he was, but I wasn't like impressed or anything. It's like, okay, he's a human just like anybody else, so he's on the air, whatever. He looks me in the face and he goes, I know, sometimes I can't believe it myself. I'm like, oh, for Christ's sake.
Amazing. Yeah, I big leagued Steve Miller when we were at Jazz Fest one year. He came looking at the artwork, nice. And I'm like, he's just like the most unrecognizable celebrity. Like, I still have no idea what Steve Miller looks like. I can sing
even though you saw him.
Yeah, and like he's wearing like casual dude who's like wearing like an expensive shirt and expensive jeans, but it's still like just a regular dude. Yeah, I saw him on the Instagram feed for Jazz Fest later on. I'm like, oh, sorry, there, Steve Miller. I think I blew you off to go hear I don't know, Lionel Richie or something.
Had only you known.
I think I would have handled it the same way. Sorry, okay. Steve Miller.
So last week's talk with Ben Fry was super interesting, talking about the survey and about what we talked about in the meeting. And I think it's really cool what you brought up about the Emerging Artists Program.
Yeah, I brought that up on the NAIA Facebook group, and if you're not a member of that, that's for art show artists as well as fair directors to kind of break things down and speak their minds about different topics. Because there are grown-ups in the room, it seems like a lot more civil than a lot of some of these other groups that are going on.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. But it just seemed like a great place to bring up the topic. So I took over as the Emerging Artist Director for NAIA. I had been the secretary. And
we kind of determined from the survey that there's a need. There's a need because the population of the artists is aging, and we don't see a lot of younger folks coming up behind us.
Yeah, we talked about that on the podcast, how the eyes don't lie. You can look around and see your neighbors, and we're all getting older, and the ones that we used to call young are you and me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're the kids.
And we're in our 50s now, so we're in our 50. It's still early on, right? It's still just, right there at the beginning. But still,
we're
we
aging.
51? No, I don't. I can't math. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Fuck off.
Anyway, back to the topic.
So there are a lot of things. We're gaining a little bit of traction talking about doing kind of an emerging artist graduation program where we continue to help and mentor and give supplies or loan out supplies. So I have a lot of ideas. They're coming together. I've talked to some of our art show friends and compatriots about the next steps that it's taking, but it's cool to see some action and
enthusiasm.
It's fun to be a part of.
I mean, you brought it up, and it's really, it's in its infancy. It's like, hey, what if we tried to tackle this problem with this kind of thing in mind, knowing that it's fresh and changeable, but then to put that out there as a thread and to see all of the engagement, all of the reactions people had to say about it, it shows that I think you're going to get a lot of people who are interested in helping with this, which I think is awesome.
I think so too. It's always funny when you bring up a topic, especially with artists, because it's like you could ask artists, hey, how do you make marinara sauce? And we're like, well, you have to do this. And
by the fifth comment, it's going to turn into F you.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times. And this thread never went to F you, so it was nice. I don't know. I valued all of the different perspectives, everything from our good friend Chris Dahlquist through everything else. So we'll see where this goes. But we've got a lot of ideas and a lot of momentum, a lot of things percolating.
Thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for heading that up. Thanks for taking that on. I mean, that's really cool. That's awesome, man.
Thanks.
That brings us to your great talk you had with Luke Proctor this week. I had a listen to it this weekend, and it's really great. I really enjoyed listening to you guys talk about craft.
I wanted to bring somebody in that does that heavy-duty craft. It's such an important part of our industry, and his voice with what he's doing is so rare. And he's such a good dude. I mean, he's just really easy to just sit down and yap with.
Yeah, so, well, without further ado, let's jump into your talk with Luke Proctor from Mount Horeb, Wisconsin.
This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Hey, Will, do you remember the old way of doing these applications with red dots on the slides and self-addressed stamped envelopes?
Do you still have a rotary phone, Douglas? No, I don't remember that.
Well, I just like that they were with us back then when we made the switch from analog to digital.
It's a huge switch, and now Zap is the industry standard.
And they're always creating features that make our lives easier too. So I do like what Zap does, and I do like that most of the shows I apply to are on Zapplication.
Exactly. So I personally appreciate what Zap is doing, and thanks for not making us reinvent the wheel every single week like we used to have to do.
How you doing, Luke?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for sitting down with me. You were telling me that you were getting ready to go on vacation.
We are going on vacation. Yeah. Not warm enough here.
No, not at all. Where's home for you?
We live in southwestern Wisconsin, so Mount Horeb is the name of our town.
Yeah. Well, good luck. Have a great vacation. I feel like that's the end.
It'll be fun. I'll see
all
you
right.
later.
Well, good talk, Luke. Have a good vacation. We'll see you next time. And are you kind of panic getting ready for shows? You got a big season?
Yeah. And I got like 3 big commissions that I've got. I actually canceled my first show, so I'm just going to go down to Florida and do Winter Park. I canceled Gasparilla.
Did you?
So I got like 3 big commissions through this gallery in New York. So that's been working out well.
That's awesome. I saw actually on your schedule, then you've got two lies there on your schedule. I was checking your website out.
I don't do a lot of this technical stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I imagine the schedule is not up to date. There might be some stuff on there from 2020. What are you doing? Are you getting ready for shows too?
Not really. I decided to go Florida free for this year.
That's all right. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of regretting not signing up for it because, of course, you see your friends and they're all down there and, the sun. And I mean, there's plenty of sun here, but it's still 30 degrees.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm having a little case of FOMO,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Florida's Florida. You can hear a new story about it every day. So
yeah,
Florida, man.
You can. You definitely can. I wanted to talk to you about, obviously I wanted to talk to you about your work and get down into it, but there are not that many blacksmiths on the art show circuit doing anything like you do. It's like you think about blacksmithing, you think about craft, you're the man.
Yeah, there's a lot more smarter people than me, I guess, instead of hauling around all that heavy stuff.
I mean, I don't know if it's about smarter. I mean, there definitely are people on a circuit doing it, but there are not people kind of like that I see. It's a lot more blacksmithing, I guess, is a lot more traditional, if you say.
Right.
Yeah. What you're doing.
Yeah. So that's definitely the things I don't want to do are more leaves and the scrolls and stuff like that.
Right.
That everybody's seen forever. So trying to take it in a new direction, do something different with it. Those cabinets that I've been doing, that's all new stuff. So those have been going well. You can work a lot on like surface texture. So that's been fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a few other people that I don't see anymore at any shows, but I know a lot of people want to do only like big gates, railings, and that sort of stuff.
Right.
I don't know. I don't mind doing the shows. I like doing the shows. I like seeing people like yourself.
Yeah.
Other friends and stuff, and getting to see people. And the work that I'm making is what I want to be making, and I'm not taking orders from somebody else. Like, can you do this design? It's all my own designs, like yourself.
Right. I mean,
everything that you come up with.
Yeah, we're unhireable, I think, at this point.
Right, it is, yeah.
It's like we've been our own boss for so long. Our fuck you meters are riding in the red as soon as we start working for somebody else.
I'll say stuff. So Tressa, my wife, she does like all the financial side of the whole business and everything, but I'll come in during the day, and she'll tell me about so and so or something, or an email or something. I'll be like, well, tell them to fuck off. And she's like, you see, you can't do that in the real world. You can't talk to other people like that. And I'm like, well, I don't see why not.
Right. Like they should be able to take it, right? This is, yeah, I have a mile long resume of things that I'm like, I guess I could get hired, but I'd probably be there for 2 weeks before they were like, you got to go. It's time. He's just not working out.
This guy's got no filter.
Definitely. So, so you're a blacksmith. We talked to Dylan Straczynski the last interview I did. So
yeah, I listened to Dylan. Yeah.
Cool. So we went egghead a little bit. We got a little heady. I want to talk to a blacksmith, get craft on the podcast a little bit and get down into it. How did you get your start?
In blacksmithing?
Yeah, in blacksmithing.
So I took a 1-year welding program after high school. Figured out pretty quickly that I did not want to be a welder.
Yeah.
We made a chisel in class, and that was super cool. We got to actually forge a chisel and then heat treat it and grind it and everything. So I thought that was just super interesting. And then one of my instructors knew a guy who did some blacksmithing. So I ended up kind of hanging out at his shop and working for him for no pay at first.
Yeah.
And then after a while, he started paying me, and then it'd only be maybe 15, 20 hours a week. I did that for, 4 years. And then I went on my own. Tress and I bought a small house. We bought what was actually an old blacksmith shop next door to the
kidding.
house. So, yeah.
So it was already
cool.
an old
it
shop?
was totally run down.
Yeah.
I bought that first shop that I got. I bought the shop and the property that it was on for $12,000.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a bunch of garbage in it and stuff, but I had to redo it and everything. But any sort of real estate for $12,000.
Yeah.
It wasn't it was in 2007, so it wasn't that long ago.
No, that wasn't that long ago at all. So you're not that old of a guy then. You've been.
Some days I feel like I am.
Blacksmithing is not a young man's trade.
No, I have been investing in large equipment to do the hammering for me.
Cool.
So, cool. We just got some big new power hammers, so those are pretty cool. They're industrial size air hammers. They're self-contained air hammers, and what they do is you hit the foot pedal, and it shoots basically air from the back cylinder to the front, and puts the piston down. And the piston is just like this big arm, and it has a die on it, and then it, basically just pounds metal together, squish it in between the two dies. They can go really fast, hit really hard.
Yeah, dangerous stuff.
But they're super controllable. So.
Yeah. So let me rewind it a little bit and talk to you about that kind of apprenticeship thing. Because I feel like that is, it's maybe not something that happens that often anymore. It's a super old school thing. It's like you kind of need somebody to teach you the ropes, to teach you how to do it. You found that guy through your class?
Yeah, through so MATC is Madison Area Technical College. So that's where I went just for a year program in the welding. And then one of my instructors knew this guy, and he lived near Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. And so I would just commute out there. But it's interesting because that guy, he actually did shows too, but smaller end, I guess, shows.
Sure.
They're not like the shows that I see you at.
Right.
But he did shows out in Santa Fe, actually.
Okay. But art shows, he was doing it. He was doing the applications and all that stuff. I feel like a lot of and it in no way belittles the blacksmithing trade, but a lot of it you think about, it's like Ren fairs and things like that. You see the guys out there just hammering it up in a forge,
Totally. And that is where I want to see my work go is, really not in the Ren kind of, not the rendezvous stuff, but really modern take on blacksmithing rather than seeing everything that everybody's seen before and what people think of when they see a blacksmith, and what they think they're going to see the work of, what they're going to think it's going to look like and everything. But it's been a lot of fun.
When I look at your work, there's a certain aesthetic to it. So you're bringing something else into the work, obviously. What are your influences to get you there to the actual furniture making? I think of you as more of a furniture maker sometimes than I do a blacksmith. When you walk past your booth, it's like that kind, the lines, the high design. Where's your head at in order to get yourself there?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I don't have an art background, whereas most of my friends at shows, they went to like art school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did this apprenticeship. From there, I'm doing that. I'm figuring out like the tooling and how to manipulate the metal and everything like that. But then you're right. The next thing comes is design.
Yeah.
And when I first started, I did a lot of arts and crafts style design. So everything had ginkgo leaves and, real blunt ends and
Sure.
real blocky and square and stuff, which was cool. I liked it. But that changes my design. Like everybody else's, your work evolves. So it went more of a sleek line, where I'm more manipulating the material and interested in that. And then recently I've gotten really interested in like the texturing, surface texturing, that sort of thing. And I've been using a lot of industrial tools and making them as well, and then using them in like really uncommon ways to make what I want to make. But yeah, it all comes down to it. It's furniture, but there's some stuff that I'm trying to make that's going to look more like sculpture rather than furniture. Like a lamp that I recently sent out to the gallery in New York, that was pretty cool. It was like a ton of like mortise and tenon joinery.
Yeah.
And then on the end of it, there was like a lampshade, for no particular reason.
Was that a piece that you posted on your Instagram? Did I see that?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that one. Is that a gallery that they're commissioning work from you that's already sold or for kind of a show?
So that is for an exhibition that actually just opened on like Friday. It's a newer gallery, and he represents artists that are more like up and coming, so not really established in that world.
Yeah.
Because that's like a whole different world than art shows too. It's wild. Like he's sold a few pieces for me, and the amount of money that they can command is crazy. But he also tells me, like the amount of money that he spends on rent for the gallery.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that's insane.
Are those different pieces than you're bringing to shows, or
they are?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like a kind of a different body of work.
Yeah,
they're bigger. So like that lamp. That lamp, I don't know. Maybe that would sell at an art show. I'm not too sure if that's a little too non-traditional or what. But
sure.
I don't know. But there's like I'm doing a piece right now that's going out to Jackson Hole, and it's this big cabinet that sits on a stand. But that one's like 7.5 feet tall and like 4 feet wide. It's got to go in two parts, and then doing a bunch of different stuff on the doors and everything. So,
right. How do you get your work to like those larger pieces? How are you shipping it?
I ship them freight. So I got to build the crates, which is a huge pain in the butt.
Huge.
But like a lot of our other artist friends, I can't give up control to somebody else, because I've had a ton of people that are like, just have somebody else build the crates. And I'm like, I can't trust them.
They'll mess it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Unless I do it, you're going to screw it up.
Yeah. Those big pieces. What kind of weight are we talking?
Oh God. So this one is probably going to clock in around 400 pounds.
Okay.
Maybe 450.
Yeah.
Something like that. So like the inside cabinet too. So like the part that's not even textured or anything, just the inside cabinet. I mean, that's like 250 pounds right there, because it's sheet steel.
Yeah. I remember renovating a house, and I put a bar in, and I needed an actual bar to put my feet on. And I used to work down at this frame shop. It was an old rail yard. And I'm like, if I just had a 6-foot piece of that railroad, I could just put that as the bar. And I was like, I'm going to do that. So I called up a buddy of mine, and we went down, and we were going to grab a piece. We were just going to steal it. And I was going to put it in. I went to pick it up, and this is a railroad track. I'm not picking it up with my buddy and throwing it in. It's like trying to move the Earth's axis. So, I mean, that's what you're dealing with when you have all this steel. Are you, how are you moving this stuff around by yourself?
You kind of get used to using, the dollies and stuff, and using levers and access points and stuff like that. And it's tough, but it can be done.
And taking it to shows, like what's your vehicle?
Well, I got a big, what is that? It's like a Ford Transit, but I only got the 250. I probably should have got the 350.
Yeah, your engine's going to blow up on you.
It's like the long one, tall, high ceilings. But I don't really stack stuff high.
Right.
So
well,
they're getting to the point now too where they're getting fairly complicated. So I can only bring like one of each piece with me. So that's the other problem is just having enough work for every show.
Yeah, that's the problem with everything. I mean, are you kind of paring it down now that you're working with this gallery? Are you doing fewer shows or how's
I am. I like last year, although I think everybody did fewer shows last year. But like last year, I did like 6 shows. I had a couple commissions, and it worked out great. This year, maybe like 8 shows, something like that.
Okay.
But it's definitely one thing that I learned from the pandemic was at that point I was just doing shows. I really didn't have any other income, And then the pandemic hits, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? You know, you got to make money somehow,
right?
And luckily we made it through just fine and everything. But yeah, not putting, the old saying, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket."
Sure.
So it's a tough juggling act, though.
It is a tough juggling. I mean, we all kind of looked at that, and I think everybody I feel like that we've talked to on the other side of, and we're not really on the other side. I hope we are of COVID, and shows are kind of opening back up. But it seems like everybody that Douglas and I have talked to, they're paring it down a little bit. They're doing fewer and fewer. I know that I'm trying to keep it under 10.
That's
and
that's wild because like before the pandemic, like everybody had this idea of like we got to do as many shows as we can do. Like you got to do as many as you can do because one might get rained out, you might just have a crappy show, something like that. But yeah, that's crazy. I know some people that haven't even come back to doing shows yet.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to one next, actually, a jeweler who has gone completely online. So it'll be interesting to talk to her about, just completely changing the business. And it's like giving us the opportunity to see how it is to work a little smarter and maybe not so hard, less traveling. I don't know. My wife is looking at, Susie's looking at not doing maybe 2 or 3 this year too.
Really?
Yeah. Just totally changed your business model. It makes me wonder how the other side, the show, we have to get a director on here. How's that looking on the other side with applications?
Right. They're still getting quite a few applications, aren't they?
You'd think so.
I don't know.
They're also not online complaining as much as we are. If Stephen King's getting bit by not as many applications, he's certainly not whining to us about it.
Yeah, that's one thing too. It's like usually I have to sit down and I'll do a bunch of applications, but like this year, I think I'm done doing them. So maybe 1 or 2 more yet. So
yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we're kind of waiting for the eggs to hatch at this point. See if there's chickens or big fat goose eggs. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's a big one coming out like next week, isn't there? Isn't
Cherry Creek? I think
Cherry Creek comes out next week.
Yeah. I always. You ever look at the juries when you're there just to see who's jurying the show and see whether
I haven't looked on purpose before, but I have looked, and then once you look, like catches your attention, you got to let's read into this and let's see what are my chances, and that means nothing.
It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it's just a way to panic.
It is. It is a way to panic.
Yeah, you're like, oh,
Seems
maybe
like
they
we're
like
good at
me.
that.
Yeah, there was one person jurying a show that I really wanted to have on the podcast, and I'm like, I gotta wait until she juries the show so she doesn't think that I'm like trying to be like, oh, did you want to be on the podcast? I don't know. Hey, let's jump back in and talk about aesthetic a little bit more. What are your influences? Who are you guys like as far as design goes? Like, where do you draw your inspiration from? How are you getting that kind of aesthetic?
So now the design style that I really like is real clean lines. So I would say like a very modern style, like Danish modern, like that sort of style. Now that furniture though, that was made basically for the masses though. So it was designed and made so that it could be reproduced easily and look good though too. So there's kind of like 2 parts to my work. There's like the frames of everything, which I use all this traditional mortise and tenon joinery, so no welding or anything. So the holes they're traditionally punched through. Of course, now I've got like a 25-ton hydraulic press that I can do it underneath.
Nice.
That saves a bit on the arm, and the legs are nicely tapered out, and I do those under the power hammer and everything. Now I'm doing these cabinets, so I'm able to work a lot on this like kind of wild surface textures that I can do. And I'm throwing in like a little bit of color here and there, and the color is like a nod to farming, basically. So agriculture and blacksmithing. There's like this huge connection. In America, I go to so many shows where I meet so many people that tell me like my grandpa was a blacksmith. And I'm
I was
like,
wondering.
yeah. I mean, it was like, I actually don't live in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. We live in this, right on the edge of this like tiny unincorporated town about 7 miles outside of Mount Horeb called Mount Vernon. And I mean, there's like 30 houses here and like one church and one bar, but at one point in time, there was 2 blacksmith shops in this town. So that's like how prevalent it was. So the colors that I use, they're all tractor and implement colors. So that's kind of a nod to that, which is fun because a lot of people have connections with that. And like I made a delivery out to Denver this year that the guy, his family had International Harvester tractors when he was a kid.
Wow.
He has since definitely not farmed since then.
But I mean, with that color palette, it feels familiar without people necessarily knowing why.
Yep. That's true. He had requested that, and I was like, yeah, no problem, man. I can do that. And then, so this is another weird thing from the pandemic. There's like a worldwide shortage of paint. So, especially aerosol cans, so like spray paint.
Yeah.
Because I'll use a lot of spray paint, and then I'll use a hand orbital sander, and I'll sand it down to kind of rough it up a bit, make it look like it's been a used piece of machinery or something like that,
Right.
But yeah, I tell this guy, I'm like, no problem, I can get that. And then I go up to, we've got a store actually called Farm and Fleet. I go up there and the shelf is just bare. There's only black paint and white paint. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah. So what did you end up doing? I remember seeing something like there's an artist that I know that uses mostly spray paint. He was posting pictures of shelves just empty. Like, so what did you end up doing?
Actually, that stuff, I did find it online, but they wouldn't ship it. My wife ended up like driving like to like Freeport, Illinois, which is like not that far. It's maybe like an hour drive.
Oh, okay.
But she drove down there to another one of those stores and picked up like one can that they had. And, yeah, it's crazy. So we got it done though. We got the guy's piece. He got it. He loved it. It was kind of cool. I dropped this piece off to him out in Denver. I was doing a couple other deliveries, and he had this like bucket of old tools from the blacksmith shop on the farm.
Yeah.
And he was showing me going through them and everything, and I'm telling him what each tool was and everything. He's like, I never knew any of this, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. So tell me a little bit about your shop. You started talking about some of the power equipment.
So we were like, we got super lucky during the pandemic, right? So the pandemic comes and we're like, don't know what we're going to do. I was like ready to go drive a truck for FedEx or something. I don't know, but we ended up getting the PPP loan.
Nice.
So we took that like bought us some time. I was building a new shop at that point on our property here. And so that, it was like everything was done except for the electrical insulation, pretty much that, and then moving the equipment in. So that gave us enough money to finish that. It took like 4 years, but we built a new shop. We paid for everything as we went. So no debt or anything like that for it. But it's just it's a pole barn, 30 by 60, 10-foot high ceilings. But our property faces south. So the shop, the back half of the shop, there's like 9 4-foot by 5-foot windows facing south. So the whole back wall is like windows. Really beautiful view.
Perfect. Is this the same piece of property that you guys first bought way back when?
No. So the funny thing is that we only moved about a quarter of a mile when we moved. So like literally I had a buddy like moving some of my bigger equipment from that old house down here with his skidster, just driving down the street. So, we bought that house, sold it, and bought this one in 2016. And then this one's got like 8 acres. So we had some room and everything and built that new shop and then invested in new power hammers and everything. So now it's like, it's very 21st century blacksmith shop. It is like, if you could call blacksmithing, cutting edge, it would be a cutting edge blacksmith shop.
Yeah. You lost a hammer of yours a little bit ago. Was that a big surprise, or was it just had some years?
So that one, I sold that one after I bought the other two. So,
okay.
But the deal was I couldn't cut it loose until I got the new ones in.
Yeah.
And then we got the new ones in, and that was like a whole ordeal in itself. Shipping company was 1 day late, which was like that didn't work well because I had a guy lined up to move them. So the big deal is that small power hammer weighed 3,400 pounds. The big one weighed 6,000.
Good
So,
Lord.
it takes quite a bit to move them.
Yeah.
So I had this guy all lined up. The shipping company calls me and they're like, we're going to be a day late. And so I called him and I'm like, what's your availability for, the next day, Wednesday? And he's like, well, not good for you because I'm going on vacation. So I was like,
no.
oh, man. So we had to wait another week, but we got him in and everything. And let's just say that'll probably be the last time I buy brand new power hammers. So they should last the rest of my life.
Yeah, they should. But it's new equipment. You never know. I mean, is it
yeah.
I mean, new equipment sometimes doesn't last as long as the old stuff.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah. It's my wife is a jeweler. I've talked about a bunch before, but and you know her, but she only buys like the German tools, that's who makes the good stuff. Otherwise it just won't last.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome that you can find that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So where do you find the kind of stuff you're working with? Like, who even makes that stuff?
This guy, so there's a guy down in Texas that imports these particular hammers. Now, what you were saying before about older equipment, there are other power hammers that, they're older and they're really, really sought after. So there's some American-made ones, and German and French are like the most popular ones.
Yeah.
But, they're really hard to find, and people are getting a lot of money for them. So these ones, they're readily available. They're a relatively decent price. I mean, with the amount of money that you invest into them, and then they should be making you money.
Right.
You're able to do your work on them, but it would be nice to have one of the old American-made ones, or there's this French kind that was really cool too, but what is that old saying? Hen's teeth. So
Right.
they're hard to find.
I bet, man. I was teasing Douglas about the fact of him. He was setting up. I think he got a new furnace, or not. I don't even know what it's called. I think it's a furnace, or it's maybe it's a kiln. I don't know. But he was talking about his equipment, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can relate. I just had to move my 7-pound easel, and I pinched my finger. It's like I just don't have any of that stuff. And that's kind of why we like to do this podcast too, to see how the other half lives and what you have to go through. I've finished paintings in my hotel room before, on the road, and that's no option for you. You've got to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Logistically, it's the equipment is big. The maintaining a big studio. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But
do you have people that can help you move your stuff around, or no?
I do. I'm lucky that I know a bunch of people around here where we live. I only grew up like 20 miles away from here. So that was the deal with the guy who moved my power hammers in. He's a carpenter that lives near here. He builds log cabins, and he's got this huge machine that can lift like 8,000 pounds.
Oh, man.
So it was a perfect machine to move these hammers. But I mean, if I didn't know him, I guess I'd have to call up to Madison or something and find like a heavy moving equipment place or something like that. So
you're not getting a moving company to move that stuff around.
I mean, this guy, it was like, I gave him a couple $100 because, it was all of his gas and stuff. And, but he didn't want anything. I gave him that in case of beer.
That's perfect. I mean, that's old school kind of country living too,
Oh yeah. Totally.
I mean, it's almost good old boy network getting things done. You're doing a modern day barn raising.
It's fun. It is definitely like that, but on the flip side of that too, you got to be willing to help other people out right away. So, but I'd, never mind doing that. So
yeah,
it's always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, talk to me a little bit about health. Like, what's the longevity as far as being a blacksmith? And do you have to baby yourself a little bit? And
that's definitely like all that big equipment that I'm getting. That will definitely help, save my body. Honestly, the hardest thing now is going to shows, and it's moving the pieces from out of the van. Like when I'll do Winter Park, I'll be like, man, I got to be on the street. I got to get up early and everything, but like I can't dolly this stuff through the park. It's just not even worth it to me.
No.
So, but and as the work progresses and evolves, it just keeps on getting bigger and heavier, which I don't know if that's the right way to go, but it just seems to happen.
I mean, that is what happens, but it's the bigger the piece, the bigger the price point. I mean, that's
true too. And I'm sure you're the same way as me. Is like you always want to push what you can do, as far as like the ideas that you're coming up with and the work that you're creating. You want to push it and make it as the best that it possibly can be. So
Right.
with that, in my line of work comes weight.
Weight and size.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember where were we? Neighbors, I guess, in St. Louis. And you were there setting up, pulling all of that stuff out of the van. And that's a lot of work, man. You got to watch your back. It's like, but again, too, you probably have to watch which shows you're willing to do. Talk about Winter Park and not wanting to be able, or not even being able to be in the actual park. You've got to pretty much pull up to your space.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that one at St. Louis that year. That was sweet because I was like on the end, and I basically just parked my van right there.
Yeah.
And I was able to unload right to the edge of my spot. So that was handy.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But it's kind of crazy too. I was next to John and Sally. Clay, that's not light either.
It's dirt. They're great big old
stuff.
boxes of dirt.
Yeah, that stuff is dense,
Yeah.
man. That is like super heavy.
It's the same thing.
So,
yeah.
Those guys, they got the same problem I do.
Right. Exactly. And I was talking to Michael Schwegman about that, and it's moving all them F-bombs around.
F-bombs. I got to get one of those. Those make me laugh every time I see them.
Every time. Tell me about that gallery. I'm interested in the fact that you change your style a little bit to do something different for them. I think that stuff is totally sellable.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that gallery is pretty cool. So it's called Culture Object.
Mm-hmm.
He's in Manhattan. So I've been there a couple times to drop stuff off. I went there. The first time I went there, though, was like, I don't know. I guess it's like kind of the height of the pandemic in the first part of it, right? I drove into New York City, and the first time I stopped in traffic was at the first stoplight.
Oh my God.
So it was so weird.
Yeah.
It was just crazy.
That's insane.
In that big giant van too.
Yeah.
But yeah, super great gallery.
So that was height of COVID? Like that's what you're talking about?
I think that was in it was in 2020, I think.
Yeah. That was like moving here and taking my kids to school for the first time. I'm like, oh my God, this is a dream. I'm an East Coast guy. Richmond is not a huge town, but it's a big enough city. And, traffic jams to and from school every morning and taking them to school. And I'm like, there's no traffic at all. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's COVID. Like nobody's actually working. That's what the problem was. But
that was weird driving into the city and no traffic at all.
I remember Brian and Ella Richards talking about that and posting pictures on Instagram about just empty streets and just a ghost town. It feels like zombie apocalypse.
Oh, it's so weird. And in that city, I love that city. It's a great place. Well, it's a great place for me to visit. Yeah. Right. But that's like where it's at. But yeah, that gallery is super cool. It's some really wild stuff. There's some other people there that you might know, like Rachel David.
Oh, yeah.
She has work there.
Uh-huh.
I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head right now, but it's a pretty neat idea of what he's got going on because he's got great work there.
Yeah.
But it's people who are not necessarily like just starting off, but they're not really represented by any other major galleries or anything like that. All objects though. It's all like culture objects.
Interesting.
But
very cool.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun, and talking to him is kind of like talking to my art show friends too. Now with not doing as many shows, and of course we're in like the height of winter right now.
Of course.
I get anxious to talk to people who are like-minded, see what other people have been doing, what kind of work they're doing and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, that's the thing about not doing Florida this year that's kind of got me down a little bit. I'm like, man, I'm having a really hard time getting it going. I go in the studio, it takes me like, when I'm rolling, I can actually generally finish a piece in like 2.5 days, just like start, finish, and just like power through something. And I get in a zone where I'm like, a week will go by and I still have the same piece on the easel and I'm like fucking around with it. And I feel like I need that deadline. I need that deadline to get me going. But, I've got a gallery show too. That's one thing up in Park City. So I'm getting ready for that one.
Those deadlines, they can be helpful.
Very.
Now, I'm curious, how do you work? Do you work on a single piece at once? Or like myself, I'll have like 5-6 things going at once.
So what I tell people versus what I actually do, like when people, you get the classic, how long does this take? Whereas I'm like, okay, how long does this take? And I have all these pieces going. I never start one to start to finish, which is horseshit. I have these very set steps that I do, which move the piece along. So I never go back and restart one of the previous steps. This keeps me going. I'm a little ADD, so I'm like, it keeps me.
Is that self-imposed, or will that
totally
mess up the way it looks?
No, it's totally self-imposed, because I know that if I don't, I'll work and rework a piece. Like that. Douglas had a great talk with Cindy Ohms this last week, and she was talking about not stopping until she recognizes the character that's in the piece, or recognizing the figure, where that would make me insane. I'm like, oh, well, I'd never stop.
Yeah.
I just keep on tweaking and painting, and so I have to create these steps for myself. Enough about me.
Oh, come on. It's interesting.
I mean, it is, man. I appreciate like the fact that you're carving out some time to actually go on a real vacation. I mean, it has to.
Yeah, so you want to hear something crazy?
Definitely.
The last time we went on a real vacation was March of 2020. So we were literally like, I'm going to say we were in the car for about 45 minutes. Now, of course, it was Florida, because it was in between like two shows.
Right.
So I think I flew home, and then we all flew down together, got in the rental car, and like, I think maybe 30, 40 minutes into the drive, started getting text messages from people like, hey, heard Winter Park canceled. Super sorry, man. Like, what? Like,
oh my God.
What happened?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it all happened.
Right.
And now here we are, we're going again. And there's like this new variant, and it's like the height of it right now and everything. And maybe it's us. I don't know.
Maybe that's just going to end the pandemic. It's the Proctor family going back to Florida. Did you guys get it at all? Anybody in your family?
No. We've been fortunate enough. I mean, I wouldn't say that we took like extreme precautions or anything like that. I mean, wear a mask everywhere you're supposed to, and get your flu shot and your vaccinations and whatnot. And
my kids are over it now, but they ended up getting it.
Your kids?
Yeah, both of my kids and my ex got it too, and but they they were vaxxed and boosted, and well, the kids they had their 2 shots, but it was super minor. But they stayed home from school and didn't get to go skiing. It was just nothing major, but
well, what schools are like. They're germ factories. So they're. I mean, our kids have gotten other stuff this year though already, like it wasn't COVID, but like runny nose or something like that.
Right.
We got like our at home tests, and then here at our school district, if the kids stay home, for them to go back to school, you have to go up to the bus garage up in town, and they do COVID tests there.
Okay.
And then you got to get one of those COVID tests though, and that takes 2 days to get back, or at least it always has. And then they can go to school after that. So one of them wakes up, and it's 6:30 in the morning, and they're like, I don't feel good. And I'm like, wait, do you really not feel good? Right. Because this is 2 days. So there's been a couple of those too, where, by like 9 o'clock, you're like, you're not sick. You were just tired.
Oh my God. Yeah, that sounds like me too. I just say that to my kids. Like I'm like, man, don't bullshit a bullshitter, because I've done every trick you're ever gonna think about pulling. I've already pulled it off. So don't even.
Right.
Yeah, the whole hot water in the mouth trick, and I was good at that one. I could get it just right where I wanted it, because you get too much of a temperature, you're going to the doctor. You got to keep
right. Yeah. You don't want like 110.
No.
Like, oh my God, you should be dead.
Yeah, 100. That's the beauty range. Man.
Perfect.
So you're a big family guy. You've got your kids. Your wife is working with you there. She helps you with the books and.
Yeah. So she started working with me in, I think it was 2018.
Okay.
She was a social worker. So in her last job, she worked at the senior center in town. So she was working with senior citizens. There's like I don't want to call it it's not daycare, but it's, it's like a place where they can go and congregate with each other.
Yeah.
They have lunch together and stuff, and then she can help them get any sort of benefits that they should be getting, but they, maybe don't know about, stuff like that, So, nice. So yeah, she was, and before that, she worked at Catholic Charities, and she worked there for a number of years. And so, yeah, she's social worker, but everybody in that profession. My mom was a social worker too, and it's a tough profession. You can get burnt out. She was getting definitely overworked, but she loved her job. She loved the people and everything. I was like, well, I could definitely use some help.
Seriously,
dealing just the financial ends of it, doing all the taxes, like all those taxes that we have to do from each state, and then customer contact. Like I would never follow up with anybody.
No,
I would, no. They would. People would even email me. I'd be like, I'm going to another show in like a month. So,
right.
But yeah, like the first year that she worked with me, she follows up with people and they buy stuff. It turns out. So, So she like made more money in the first year than she had made, the previous year.
Oh my
doing
God.
that. So it's been good.
Yeah. And you follow up with those things. You don't have to travel necessarily as much too.
Right. Yeah.
So she's keeping you home.
Keeping you home. Well, that was the funny thing. I got those new power hammers in, and her parents were down a weekend or two ago, and her dad was out there with me, and all three of us were out there. He's looking at him. He looks at her and he goes, I guess he can work like 18 hours a day now.
Nice. I was talking to Dylan actually before this too, and Dylan was like, ask him if his father-in-law understands what he does for a living yet.
Nope. He makes shit out of metal and then charges people too much for it. That's what he does.
Yeah, that's the head scratcher for a lot of our families. I mean, my parents, they're still shocked when I tell them which books I've read. They're like, you read? I can't believe you know how to read. I'm like, I do read.
I'm actually thinking about reading a book on the plane. It'll be the first time in a while.
Nice.
Well, you know what it's like with little kids. It's like, I haven't read anything longer than like 10 pages in like 9 years now.
How old are your kids?
They're 5, 6, and 9.
Oh my God.
So the 9-year-old though, she reads to me now.
That's great. You're almost in the sweet spot. You're going to get
it is kind of cool.
Yeah.
She's reading the classics. She's reading the 4th grade nothing right now.
Nice.
So
man, got a little Ramona coming.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, Beverly Cleary. I used to, God, I remember going to the pool for the first time. My kids are a little bit older than yours, 11 and 13, and going to the pool for the first time. And they disappeared into the pool. Well, not disappeared, but I just saw them just, jump into the pool with their friends and leave me. They didn't want to play with Dad anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't bring a magazine. I didn't bring a book. Like, I just kind of sat there, like, just hanging
Staring
out
off into space.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess I could. I do know people. I guess I could talk to the other. Huh. All right. But yeah, you're you're going to get into that sweet spot. And you're going to be like, oh man, I can read a book in there. The first time I had with the kids reading a book, like getting into that sweet spot and going on vacation, I had to go see a chiropractor. The words because I screwed my neck up because I wasn't used to looking down like that, like putting my head down and looking into a book. So like, how'd you hurt yourself? I'm like, well, I was sitting on the beach and
sitting on the beach
trying to get through a little Carl Hyacin.
This isn't going where you think, Jack. No. I was reading a book.
Exactly. Well, cool. You're getting ready to take off for vacation. When do you guys leave?
Monday morning, super early, like 6 in the. But we have to go to Milwaukee. There's so Madison's got an airport.
Sure.
Madison's closer, but Milwaukee. See, we use I always use the Southwest card, business card, and then gain the points, and then we use that for plane tickets.
Perfect.
Right. So it works out good. Free plane. Well, I guess they're free plane tickets.
You
I buy a lot of shit though.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we do. I got the Marriott card, and Susie's got the Delta card, and so we got it covered when we want to travel.
Yeah. So that's the way to do it. I don't know. I guess it's always good for credit too, but you can pay for your tickets that way, and then you just have to pay for lodging. But that's why we have to fly. Milwaukee is Southwest flies out of there. So
nice.
So we got to go there, but that's all right.
Cool. And you're gone for a week?
Gone for a week. Then it's right back to work. So
back down to
forging, making stuff out of metal.
Right. Are you? How do you protect those ears?
I have custom made earplugs.
Nice.
So when Tressa, my wife, when she worked at the senior center, she had to make a lot of appointments for hearing aids for people. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I think they make earplugs too. And I was like, you kidding me? So I went in there and they just like inject this stuff into your ear, take out the mold, like a week later, you got a pair of custom molded earplugs. So those work sweet. They're
Those
really
are
nice.
amazing. Yeah, that's good. You got to protect your ears.
Oh, man, totally.
Yeah.
But they're super comfortable. I barely know that I have them in. They work really well. And, it's a good thing to protect your ears and your eyes.
Yeah, you got to. Are you apprenticing anybody?
I don't have anybody. No, I don't really have anybody right now. It's just been so busy with regular work, and the kids being home all last year and everything.
Yep.
Tressa she does a lot she's like the treasurer and like vice president on the Mount Horeb Art Association board. And she's on a bunch of other boards and stuff. So we've been talking about reaching out to like the high school and seeing if they want to do something where a kid could get credit.
Yeah.
Right. So come in 2 or 4 hours a week or something like that.
Very cool.
And then they can get credit that way and get a kid interested in something like that.
Yeah. Get something, pass it on a little bit. I just took over the emerging artist thing for NAIA and just starting to try to kind of get the ball rolling and figure out how to get our industry a little bit younger. Start people in on this.
That's always been the talk ever since I started. And like, no, I'm not like one of the young people anymore.
Isn't that weird?
So,
I mean, you're younger than me, but
it's weird.
It's like, I'm like, God, I remember when I were like, oh, I'm like, God, now I'm that guy to somebody else. I'm like, wow.
I totally am. I talk to people and they're like, we were out drinking till like 2 in the morning. And I'm like, 2 in the morning? Are you crazy?
Right? How are you standing?
Yeah.
God.
I would do that, but not, at a show.
Yeah, sure. What's next for you? You want to keep doing this? Keep doing art shows and traveling around and.
I never want to say never or anything like that. I enjoy the shows.
Yeah.
Someday, retire. But to be honest, Tress and I were talking about it the other night. I don't know if I'd ever be able to like retire from making things.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm just always going to make something, and if my body holds out, I'll do this for years and. I can't keep everything, so I'll have to sell it somehow.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Probably do it forever, I guess.
Yeah.
Or else I'll just make something smaller.
I'm with you. You could get down and do the smaller things, but I don't see that happening for you. You're a big, just keep getting, hey, you guys move that over there. You can.
Yeah. Right. There you go.
Right.
I mean, that's what these kids are basically for, right?
Exactly.
They're supposed to go to work. So,
that's right.
Yeah, I just don't see any way that I'll ever be able to stop making things. So
absolutely. I feel like our kids are going to rebel against us and become bookkeepers, though.
It seems like I talked to a bunch of people on the art show circuit, the art show tour, or whatever you want to call it, that they're like, yeah, my kid's going to school, mechanical engineering, chemical engineer, doctor. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's crazy.
It is. I mean, but there are some of those, like Bruno and Kemper and Kyle Spears, the sons of the Zachmans, that are passing this thing on. So I could see. We just have.
I think that's awesome too.
I think
too. That's a pretty special thing. I think it would be a pretty special thing as the parent to watch your kid do that too.
Yeah.
So
there's a great talk coming up next time that Douglas does with Tony Cray, and his son is just a rock star.
He's awesome.
Oh my God, he's amazing, and his son is an incredible glass worker too.
Dude, yeah, Nico, I follow him online.
Yeah,
and, his work is super cool.
It's incredible. Just another kind of rock star on a different plane, selling his work on a different, totally different style. He doesn't have to travel like our dumbasses.
No, I know he doesn't get to see the interstate.
That's true. Well, what do you wish I'd asked you? Anything else?
I'll tell you one. At every show that I get, at least half a dozen times. So do you shoe horses? So at least half a dozen times.
That's amazing.
But that's kind of weird. I'll tell you one thing about that. I was taking this class one time with this guy he was the head blacksmith at Colonial Williamsburg. So I don't know if you ever went there when you were a kid or anything like
Richmond.
that.
It's 60, 80 miles away. Yeah.
I figure you had to be close.
Oh, definitely.
So this guy, he does different type of work than I do, but I thought it would be interesting because he's really well known and he does a really good job. But I was telling him that story, and he said, well, of course it was that way in America because all these immigrants came, from Europe, and in Europe it was a class system where there was, blacksmiths that only did gates or railings, window grills, tinsmiths, silversmiths. So it was very individualized, and they were all paid accordingly too, as far as that goes. But you come to this country, and it was cowboy up. It was like you had to do what you had to do to get by.
Right.
So I get all these people who would be like, my grandpa was a blacksmith and he could fix anything, and now I know, like, he had to. There was no other choice.
That's amazing.
I always thought that was kind of interesting as far as that craft goes. I mean, I can't imagine too many other people get questions like that.
No, I think 2D is just how long does it take you?
How long does it take you?
How long does it take you? Like, that's the big one for a lot of the 2D. I think that's the big one. They want to know.
They want to know. Yeah. How much are you getting paid?
But right. They want to know. They want to work it down into an hourly rate.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you tell them, like, well, like this painting right here, this piece right here, this is more well-traveled than you are, my friend. So
yeah. And it's like, we are, as artists on the street, it's like we're the hot person at the bar. They're just trying to find an in. They just want to talk to the person that they're like, well, it's everything's flattering. Even if they say something super dumb, they're just trying to get a little in with you. We're like, hey, do you blah blah blah? I'm like, well, no, I don't shoe horses, but it's just a shitty pickup line. It's all they're trying to do.
I totally agree with you. Now that you say that I think you're right.
Yeah.
They definitely want some sort of connection.
They just want that little in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come around here often. Yeah. Right.
So.
Well, have a fantastic vacation, my friend. And
cool, man. Thank you.
Thank you so
much
for
having me on.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to have some like heavy duty just craft on here. You're the man. So thank you so much.
Cool, man. Cool. All right.
Safe travels.
Cool, man.
All right, man. Bring my fireplace.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Or we'll talk.
Definitely.
All right. Safe travels.
All right. See you, Will.
Bye now.
Great talk with Luke. Will, I really enjoyed everything you guys talked about.
It's cool to get inside Luke's head a little bit and see where that old world craft and new world design kind of comes from.
I have a little experience with the old world trade thing. I do. So I talked about this on our first episode of the podcast, but we found out after we got into blowing glass that I actually came from a long line of European glass blowers, which...
That's incredible. I love that story.
And so after we started blowing glass, I got to learn about glass as a trade. And I thought that what you talked about with Luke, how there was kind of like this hierarchy or this class system involved in the different types of blacksmithing that was done in Europe, there was a similar aspect to that with glass. The Sigwarth glassblowers, they were a nomadic group of people. They would build these glass-blowing villages, and they used wood as their resource to burn their furnaces and to melt their glass. Well, once they would use up the trees in that vicinity, they'd pack up, nomadic tribe, move on to another area, and they would move all throughout Europe. So there's Sigwarths
you virus of a people. Eating up the resources and moving on.
Absolutely. But think about this. I think about, glass blowing's in the blood, but there's also that nomadic quality that I feel like is in my family's blood as well, where, I go to these shows and I kind of feel like destiny. I mean, it's so bizarre. Yeah. It's just really crazy.
That's incredible. That's really cool. Did you know that the Armstrongs used to go into these little glass blowing tribes and smash and smash?
No, they did not.
No, they did not. That's amazing, though. I love hearing those stories. Do you guys have a crest, like an old world kind of crest? That
we do. Actually do. There's a Sigwarth that's on the same generational line as me, that if you go back like 6 generations, they are family shared siblings in the same line or whatever. And he heads up this entire ancestry association that is like thousands of Sigwarths are part of. And he writes these yearly histories about different things about our family. And he's come to the US and he actually showed us the crest. And I didn't give it the kind of reverence I should. I think I was a little flip about it. But
boring.
These things are a big deal to these people. It's really, yeah.
All right, we will post our. I've got an Armstrong family crest and the Armstrong. Oh. We actually have our own plaid, the Armstrong plaid.
Really?
Which is really cool. My mom is way into it. But it's we'll post that on either our Facebook links or our website there at Independent Artist Podcast.
Will we do that, Will? Will we?
No.
Just teasing you.
No, that's really interesting to me. I love history like that. And that is, I don't know, it's why we sit down and talk to the people that we do. Luke Proctor needs himself a crest. See if he can come up with one. Big old hammer. His big electronic hammer.
I was actually talking to him this week a little bit after your episode, and he sent me some photos of himself in the studio, and I said, Luke, you look like a glass blower. And he said, actually, I have a lot of the same equipment you have in common. He was talking about these burners that are glass blowing burners that we have in our furnaces. And so anyway, it's just kind of cool to learn about how other people do things.
It is, and that's why we're here, and I can't wait for folks to hear next week's talk, as well as you sit down with just one of my favorite humans, Tony Cray. He's just like the zen in the art of blown glass. It's going to be incredible to sit down and hear what you had to say with Tony.
It was good. He's somebody who I've been doing shows with now for 20 years. And I thought I knew everything about him, but I learned a lot of new stuff that was really kind of cool and really great talk with him.
Yeah, I'm not a glass blower, obviously, and I carry my little easel around. It can work wherever I want. It's cool to sit down and hear that talk with, and you don't nerd out on glass either. You keep it reasonable. It's just, I don't know. I've always admired Tony and the way he goes about his business. So it's a great talk.
Talking about making stuff, being makers and creatives, and yeah.
Well, folks, here we come to the end of another podcast, and I hope you've had a good time and have good luck at the shows if you're traveling to and from. Good weather, good sales, good luck.
We'll see you on the road, guys. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, check out Will's website at willarmstrongart.com and my website at sigwithglass.com.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.